Welcome to the True Life Balance Podcast. My name is Brad Lancaster.
And my name is Tiffany Lancaster. And this is a podcast about relationships and deep connection.
And this is a podcast about health and fitness.
And this is a podcast about consciousness and purpose.
And this is a podcast about business, sales, marketing, entrepreneurship. In other words, this is a podcast about everything that we care about. So come along for the ride and hope you enjoy. Welcome, Jimmy, to our podcast. By way of introduction, and I told you this, we started this podcast for our sphere, for the people that know us and like connecting with us. And so many of them don't know you. And so I wanted to make sure people got to know you right away. And if you're one of my friends or your Tiff's friends, you need to be following Jimmy. Let me give you a quick bio. Jimmy is an entrepreneur. He started his professional career mostly as a real estate agent, but he's a real estate agent, an investor. He is an influencer. And not just like when people say influencer, they think social media influencer. Jimmy is a thought influencer. And that's the thing that I think is amazing about him. He's a coach. I've seen him be sports coach, but he's also a coach for men and for humans all over. A speaker, an author of 2 books. His most recent book, I just got done listening to it a few months ago. You End Up Where You're Headed is, I think, especially for people that want to go on any path of growth, is a must read. If you're content with where you're at and you don't want to grow, don't read this book because it will unsettle you. It will absolutely unsettle you. He's a podcaster and the owner of Rookery Studios, where we are filming and recording this podcast today. A world traveler. In fact, he traveled more than anybody I know during the pandemic.
Yeah, I got to 17 new countries during the pandemic. So that's pretty good.
That's pretty good
for a pandemic.
Did I miss anything?
Well, he's
a brother. Like one of the I've always loved about Jimmy watching him. He's an amazing brother. He's an uncle. Like I actually have wished at times that I could be one of his nieces or nephews because he's an amazing uncle. And for me, he's like one of the best friends in the world.
Well, I appreciate that introduction. It's funny, when I was a kid, it's a true story. I just more than anything, I didn't want to be a boring adult. They drove me nuts. Like, I hated boring people. I hated how they dressed. I hated how they talked. I hated how they walked. I hated how they decorated their house. I hated how they ate. Like, everything about boring people, like, I despised it. And I'd go to a friend's house and they had a boring dad. I was like, get me out of here. So as an adult, I just wanted to be, I'm just trying to make my 12-year-old happy and proud of me, I guess.
I think he probably is. Well, that's funny. I wanted, I shot you a few ideas and we're going to take this wherever, but this is, I really want to, you spend so much time interviewing people on your podcast, and I want people to know you better because I think you're one of the most amazing human beings that I know. So tell me a little bit more about your early life growing up as Jimmy Rex. And
my buddy said the other day, I was listening to a Joe Biden interview, and every time I hear him talk, I wrote to my buddy, I said, I sent him the video, and I said, is this what I sounded like when I didn't read the book in school and tried to bullshit my way through the report? And that was pretty much me to a T. Like, I was the kid just always getting in trouble. But I was just curious, like looking back, I probably had ADD, but didn't want to do anything about that. That would be a tragedy to take that away. But so I was just always I just wanted to talk and I wanted to make people laugh. I loved entertaining. Like, I discovered very early on in my life that if I made people laugh, they liked me more. And so I got in trouble a lot. I didn't care. Like, I never really had, my heroes, even when I was little, I would hear about the Boston Tea Party. And I was like, those are my guys, the rebels, the guys that were taking it to the authority from a very young age. And so I really didn't respect authority like you probably should. I remember one time I was in...
Well, like we were taught you should.
Sure, like you thought you should. Yeah, exactly right. I remember when I was in 6th grade, the teacher held me back for recess because I'd gotten in trouble there was a spelling bee for the whole school, and somebody had paid me like $10 to yell out something at one of the kids while they were trying to spell because our buddy was the one going up against him, and I got in trouble for that. And then she... who just yells out in the middle of the assembly.
I've never heard that story. Yeah. That's funny.
And then I'm just trying to give you guys a little bit of idea of how I was as a child. But It's funny because I bet my parents worried more about me than anybody, and probably needed to worry less. Like, because I really had a very strong compass of like, oh, I'm never going to do this. Like, I didn't like to hurt people. I knew I wasn't going to go down like certain roads and things like that. But anyway, so that particular time when the teacher pulls me into the hall or she held me from recess, and she just grilling me for like 10 and bless her heart, she's like pouring her heart out to me. She's, like, Jimmy, you're going to lead people for good or for bad. You've got to make your decision. And I'm just thinking inside, like, I cannot believe I'm missing the softball game right now. I was so mad. And I remember she gets done and just pours her heart out, gives it everything she has. You can imagine this 26-year-old girl. She's probably stressed out of her mind trying to teach this class, and this little shit Jimmy won't be quiet ever. And she just pours her heart out, and I look her dead in the eyes, dude, and I go, "Are you done yet?"
Oh my God.
And dude, oh yeah, that was a bad day at the house. But so I had that in me for sure. But I was also like always trying to make money from a very young age. So, and this is why. So probably remember being 7, 8 years old.
How many kids in the family?
7 kids in my family.
7 kids, yeah, one of
so
7.
It was always pretty tough. My dad like drove an 18-wheeler for a while. He had this, I guess before I was kind of born or even older, I guess to remember it, he did really well, like super wealthy, but was really heavy in real estate. And then, interest rates went to 18%. He lost, I guess he had like a sports gym. He had dozens and dozens of houses, lost all of it. We had this huge piece of land though. It was like had a barn and a baseball field on it and like 15, 20 acres. That's what I grew up on in Taylorsville, right in the middle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, pretty awesome. But we'd like hit golf balls and play baseball. Like we had all sorts of space. Yeah. So it was really cool as a kid to be able to run around and, just.
And all
do
your
fun
brothers,
stuff.
I mean, you guys are all athletes. You guys all play sports and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
We had a batting cage in our backyard. We had a full baseball field, and we had our own baseball
Where
field.
were you at in your, like, were you
I was
middle,
the 6th
youngest?
out of 7 kids.
Oh, okay. So.
Yeah, and I remember like, as a kid, and so I would just kind of meander and go do my own thing a lot. But my parents, I mean, it was very much, they were always keeping us in line as well. Like you knew certain lines not to cross.
You said Taylorsville, right?
Yeah, in Taylorsville. And anyway, and so as a young kid though, I always wanted to make money. And what I was getting at was I would sit at the bottom of the stairs and I heard my parents fight about money all the time. That was like their fights. And I remember like probably subconsciously or consciously, whatever, I made this decision like, okay, like not having money means pain in the family. Like not having money means fights. And so I remember from a very early age being obsessed with making sure I had money, because to me, that's how you kept your family at peace, was to have money. And so I would throw garage sales. I'd buy the baseball cards and do all that. I remember one time I went to Shopko and I was probably 10, because I remember where we were living, maybe 11, and they had the like theater-sized candy for whatever reason of hot tamales for sale for like 30 cents. And they were usually $1. And so I borrowed $10 from my dad. I go buy all of them, like 30, 40 of these. I go sell them for $1 to everybody. And I made my first $20. I thought I was rich, paid my dad back. And I made that in like a day, made like $20. And so like as a 9 or 10-year-old, like you're balling if you got $20.
Oh, for sure.
At least back then. Now I can't beg my nieces and nephews. I'm like, I rented out 7 Peaks, the water park last year, and I was trying to get my nephew to go down the big slide with me. He wouldn't, for $100, he wouldn't go down the slide. He's like 9. I'm like, dude, you know what I would have done for $100 when I was 9? I'd have jumped off the side of this and hoped I hit the pool, okay? But anyway, so yeah, just always hustling and doing stuff like that.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
So you raised LDS, and then you went on a mission, right?
Yeah.
And came back from your mission and got into real estate. How soon? How long was it before you got into real estate?
I got home from my mission. I was 21 and I put up people's Christmas lights for that first month or two home, made $5 or $6 in a month, was like feeling pretty good about that. Well, it's because it's interesting too, right? Like when you're younger, you want to have money and you want to be rich, but you don't know how, and you don't even know if. You're kind of like hoping that that's going to happen for you. And I remember after I did the Christmas lights, because that was the first thing I was like, wow, like I just made $6 in a month putting up people's Christmas lights. But it was cold, and watched my brother almost fall off the roof a few times. And he didn't love the work necessarily, but I answered an ad in the paper. What I wanted to do was be a waiter. I wanted to be a server because I love talking to people. And I just learned Spanish, and so I thought everyone will hire me. Well, I wouldn't work Sundays though, because I was pretty damn Mormon, and I wouldn't work Sundays, and so nobody would hire me. And so I ultimately answered an ad in the paper to sell meat door to door. And I remember when the guy explained it, how much money I could make, and I went out my first day. Well, basically you have a price that you buy the meat at, and then anything over that you get to keep. And, and I went out my first day. It was funny. They loaded me up with 6 cases in my truck with a little freezer. And I was like, well, what if I sell all this? And each case has like 50 cuts of meat. So you sell it by the case. And, he's like, well, just call us. We'll get you some more. And I went out and I'd never sold. I didn't know. I mean, I'd been a missionary. I was really good at it. But I didn't know if I could sell. And that first day on the door, I think within an hour 45, I'd sold all of it. And I called my bosses. I made $300, Called my bosses and I'm like, hey, I'm out of meat. I need some more. And they're like, we went to Provo. This was in Salt Lake. they're like, we don't have any more. So just go home for the day. I'm like, okay. And so I was like, well, I was just, it literally blew the doors open of my life though, because every possibility changed that day, because all of a sudden my worst case scenario, I knew I could make $100,000 selling meat door to door. And my mind just started going with all these things I could do. And it was just a really pivotal moment. And that was so I got into that and did that for the next few years. But I also was just always wanting to try other things. So I was still in school. I started a TV show. The TV show was just kind of had a funny idea, thought I'd go with it. And here's my dumbass, actually made the TV show. Like most people are like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And I'm like, no, okay, so what do I need to buy a TV? Okay, well, I need to find a place to put it on the air. I need to buy all the equipment. I need to get somebody to film for me. I need to get somebody to edit for me. And I just put this all together. And I looked back, because I was the host of the show too. It was called Not on the First Date. And it was the number one show on Sundays in Utah. And I remember I saw an episode of me, and oh my gosh, Brad, I am a baby. I looked at me and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, why? How did no one stop me? Like,
how old were you?
22. But I look at 22-year-olds now. They don't even know how to tie their shoes and deliver Grubhub or whatever, And I'm just like, I literally started an entire thing. From scratch. I just literally hustled this whole thing together. I went and found, sponsors. I got like $75,000 from sponsors. I got a title sponsor with 7 Peaks again, going back to them. I had all these. I found the video guy, I found the editor. It was hilarious. I was just hustling.
So how did you go from that to real estate?
Well, I was doing that, and the problem was everyone was getting paid but me. It was by the time I paid my editor, bought all the equipment, I about broke even. I probably made a little bit of money, not much. I was still making a lot of money selling meat. I could make $15,000-$20,000 a month selling steak. And I had put a bunch of freezers in the back of my condo. I bought a condo here in Provo, and this was 6 months after my mission, and I filled it, the whole backyard. I had a backyard. I filled it full of freezers. My poor roommates never knew why they had to pay their portion of the electric bill. It was like $400, but I probably owe them a few bucks for that. But no, I ran it out of there. So I was making money on the meat, and then the TV show was just kind of like, oh, this will be fun. And so I didn't mind that I wasn't making money, because I was making all these connections. I'm going to every major business, and I'm getting to know the owners, and I'm working with them. I'm negotiating with them. Just piecing. I'm working with the head of K-Jazz. Like, they wanted me to do 2 more shows for them. They go, hey, we want to do one called Making a Jazz Dancer, and you follow all the. I blew it on this. I should have done it, but you follow all the jazz dancers around and make a video of their tryout.
You were doing reality TV 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's when it was in its infancy.
Very infancy. Yeah, I remember, Bachelor, I think, was 1 or 2 years old. Survivor just come out. And then, I did this TV show. Well, what we copied was pre-reality TV. It was part of reality TV, but remember the dating show Blind Date? That's what I copied. And so we would take people on a date. And we would just film it, and then here's how old school this was. Okay, this is how we had to do this, Brad. This is why I quit doing it. It was so exhausting, because this was the schedule when we were filming. So we'd go on the date on Saturday. We'd film 2 dates. We'd try to, because each episode had 2 dates. So I had to find, usually Friday, I had to find the places. I was trying to get the people, this is how I got money, is I'd get the location we went to pay us to go do the date there and film it. So I'd get the restaurants, I'd get the entertainment place. And I'm trying to come up with fun, creative dates that are going to look good on camera, too. So that was like kind of Friday. And then Saturday, would go film everything, all day, both dates. So you're probably 5 hours each date. Then I'd take all the raw footage on Sunday, and I would get on the phone with my buddy. I'd get all the raw footage on Sunday, and I would have to edit it down to what I thought was the right basically 22 minutes of the episode, so the 2 dates. So now I've got that. So then I would burn that on a CD. We did not have the technology back then. I would burn it onto a DVD, and I would FedEx it to my buddy Cameron on Monday morning. And then he would get it. He was in California. He was going to Houston. He's hilarious. He's the guy that co-wrote my book.
Oh, yeah,
with
Cam's
me.
great.
He's just a
So
very
creative
sharp, creative, witty guy. And so he and I would get on and watch the DVD Monday and make all the jokes. Okay, here's where we're going to put in this. Here's where we're going to put in this, because we're doing these pop-up bubbles and all these jokes. So Monday we'd do that. Then Tuesday, I had to get into the lab and essentially get with my guy and make all the pop-up. It took forever back then. I don't know how they do it now, but it took forever. It was 5, 6, 8 hours.
Well, it takes
that doesn't even, so
takes 5 seconds to make a reel.
Did you have everyone like apply for the blind date? How did you find the people?
Well, that was kind of part of my genius. So I was always, and here was part of like when I was in college. So I noticed from an early age, if you go to a party, no one cares. But if you host the party, everybody wants to know that guy, especially if it's a great party. I watched this with my buddies in high school, and so I was like, well, I'm just gonna be the guy that throws the best parties. So I would throw awesome parties all the time. We would use all my meat. So we're 400 people having steak at a party, and this is how I got all my meat salesmen.
Was it like no alcohol party?
Oh yeah, zero alcohol. No, this, I mean, zero.
This is a Mormon party.
Yeah, no, but we threw some wild parties for no alcohol, I'll tell you that. Like we did so at my condo, we did a beach party once. I freaking shipped in. I had my buddies 4 truckloads full of sand from Utah Lake, and we had literally filled my entire condo full of 1.5 feet of sand and had a beach party. I mean, it was crazy. And this was the middle of May in Provo, and so everyone's in their bikinis and the whole thing.
Only Jimmy Rex can throw a badass party like that with no alcohol.
It was the best. And then we did this one girl this one time, she hired me. She goes, Jimmy, I've always wanted to throw a killer party. My parents have the best house in Draper. It's secluded. It's on 4 acres. Like nobody will bug us. I'm like, all right, here's how we're going to do it, though. If we're doing it right. And so I was like, here's the budget I need for food and stuff. We made a mud pit, and so we're going to do girls mud wrestling. I had a boxing ring for the guys that box. We had a DJ on the dance floor, on the basketball court, and they had a pool. I mean, this was a party. This was a bash. And it was as good as advertised. I mean, the mud wrestling was I think I was giving $100 to the winner or something. So the girls are just going at it, and everyone's loving no alcohol. And everyone's just having the time of their lives. About 1:30 in the morning, cars are just funneling in. I mean, there's a line of literally a half a mile long of cars coming to this party at 1:30 in the morning. And all of a sudden, the cops show up. And I'm so pissed. And so I go to talk to them, and they're like, hey, man, you got to shut it down. We had a noise complaint. I'm like, you have a noise complaint? We're in the middle of nowhere. This is 4 acres. He's like, I'm sorry. We had a noise complaint, and you got to shut it down. I'm like, no way. I'm like, no, I'm not shutting it down. And he goes, dude, the homeowner called us and asked us to shut down the party. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, Megan. I'm like, what the hell? This girl so I go find her. She's crying on the steps. I'm like, what is wrong with you? It's the best party ever. She's like, somebody trampled all my mom's flowers. I just want everyone to go home. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, anyways. So we threw some pretty amazing. I had people literally showing me videos of my parties later on. Like, dude, look at this party I went to. They had mud wrestling. I'm like, oh yeah, see the referee? Kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, but we threw some good bashes, man. But that's how I would build, so like when I'd go with the TV show even, that's how I'd get all my people. I'd just start asking. I'd just be like, hey, who wants to be a part of this? Who wants to be a part of this? And you find this guy that edits, and then this guy, guy in my ward that did this, and guy I went to high school with filmed, and next thing you know, you've got
so
your people.
So you just sent these people on blind dates? Like, how did you determine
whether
or not?
So that was part of the genius, too. So what I was getting at was we throw all these parties, because I always knew it would get me dates, right? Thanks for bringing me back. Tangents lost. So I had this theory. If you ask a girl out, you're immediately at a disadvantage. She knows you like her, you're coming from a weak position. But if you're like, hey, me and my buddies are throwing a party, you should come, that was the way, and they'd come and see, like, oh, these guys are legit, these guys are fun, they could get to know you that way, then you're always coming from a place of advantage. And so we would throw a barbecue like once a week, and that's how I'd get all my meat salesmen, but that's also how, so if I meet a girl in the hall, the Hall of Flags over at UVU, instead of asking her out, I'd be like, hey, we're having a barbecue on Thursday, you should come. And we'd have all the steaks, and they're always like a really cool, good-looking group, there. And so that's how I'd get all my dates. I mean, I was going on, no joking, college. I mean, I went on over 1,000 first dates.
Wow.
Yeah, but easily. Like we were talking. Yeah. I was talking to a kid the other day. He came to see if I could talk to him for a minute. He's only been on 2 dates in his whole life. He's 19 years old. And I'm like, shit, dude, like, just go. Like, you're making too much out of this. Just go have fun. And I was trying to explain to him, I'm like, dude, I used to go on 5, 6, sometimes multiple dates in a day. Like, I'd go on a day date and a night date. I'm like, just go have fun. You don't have to put all this emphasis on it, you know?
Everybody's not going to be your wife.
No, well, just go have fun. Like, I just enjoyed dating. It's like a platform for me to perform. I don't know. It's just like, I just loved, you know? And if you're lucky, you get kissed at the end of the night with a little Mormon dry humping as they go into it, you know? And so I put my old roommate on the phone. I'm like, watch this, dude. I said, I call him up. I go, Ron, how many dates a week? Don't lie. Don't make this up. Don't exaggerate. I haven't talked to this guy in a few months. Like, how many dates did we go on every week when we were roommates for 5, 6 years straight? He's like, oh gosh. He's like, minimum 3 a week, minimum. I mean, it's what we did. And like, guys, because what we would do, again, it was just, we had these built-in advantages. So I'd throw the party or I'd have the barbecue and you invite people over. So with the TV show, it was, again, I was just trying to get dates all the time, if I'm being honest. And so for the auditioning, I just would like pass out flyers, you know, hey, Mormon dating show, if you want to be on it. Like, and so I had these auditions, and we didn't get that good at people from the auditions. It was mostly people I already knew or met. I ended up having to like beg people to be on, to be honest. It was pretty hard. I'd like, day of, somebody canceled because I got a zit or something, and I'm over here like, you got to be kidding me. And so I'm just like scrambling last minute. But if you watch the first season of it, it's actually lost in the ether, but it was all my best buddies. It was pretty funny.
So was there any kind of strategy in how to like match people up, or was it just
I was just trying to make good TV. So I was not trying to pair them to make love or anything else, or to find love.
You weren't trying to like get
No, in
married.
fact, there was one time this kid, and God bless him, like, I'm such a dick, but he showed up and he had a pop collar, and he just thought he was bad, you know? He just thought he was a cool dude. And I had this most gorgeous girl. Her name was Shay from Layton. I'll never forget. She's beautiful. She was a model, like, full-time. Like, she was beautiful. And this dude thought he was such a stud. So I told her ahead of time, I'm like, hey, make him look bad on the date, you know, like, be a bitch. And so she did the whole date, and the poor guy. And then all of a sudden, though, I'll give him so much credit. He freaking won her over. About halfway through the date, she couldn't help herself. And I was like, good for freaking this guy. And
That's
so,
awesome.
And I still made the show look like it didn't go so well, but he actually did pretty good. I was impressed.
So one of the things, and we'll get into real estate, but one of the things that like sets you apart, and like it sets you apart from a young age, you have this ability to have an idea, get inspiration, but then the thing you do that's so, and I'm going to say it's really unique, is you take action.
Massive.
And you take massive action. Tell me about that, because all of that sounds like scary shit. Like going in, like for the average 21, 22-year-old kid, does fear enter into the ball game for you?
Say that, and I have to think back. I'm like, I wasn't afraid to do any of it. No, I was.
So there was no fear.
No, I was just having fun. Like, well, I rented out the water park last year, and I was hanging out with this woman that came to be there. And one of my old buddies from that time frame came with his family to the water park. He goes, "Can I just tell you about Jimmy for a second?" He starts telling these stories, stuff like this. I've forgotten all this stuff. And he goes, this was before YouTube. This was before TikTok. He wasn't doing this to be famous. He just wanted to have fun every single night. Like, they were literally just doing this to entertain themselves. And it was so damn fun. It was. We were just having a good time. Like, so every night, I don't know, when you're not drinking, you got to get creative, right?
Right.
And so it was kind of the gift of us, honestly, like being like super adventurous and Mormon at the same time, because it was just every night we'd be like, all right, let's go make an adventure. And we would. And
I feel like you still live your life that way.
Oh,
though.
I do. It's just at a much different, higher level now, right? But I just did those years. And this is the thing about like my journey is, I loved high school. I loved my mission. I loved growing up Mormon in my 20s. Like all those things, I was happy through all of it. Like it was all part of a beautiful journey that I've been on. And I think that's why I don't have any of these weird animosities. Like I loved it. Every part of it was so fun. I was learning, and it's funny, like I hear myself talk, I'm like, yeah, I probably should have been a little more afraid. Like when I watched the video of my TV show, I was shocked at how young I looked. Because to me, I remember like having my shit together. I remember it working. I remember like feeling in control of all that, right? And I look back and I'm like, how? Why did I do this? Like, it's funny. Yeah, it's just, but no, I don't. I'm just not afraid of, and I had a buddy one time, well, he's not even really a buddy, but there was a guy, he was dating a friend of mine, and we had like a night where we were all hanging out together, and we got to know each other a little bit. And I'd never really cared for the guy, and I knew he didn't like me. But the girl he was dating is like a close friend of mine, and she was always like, no, you gotta get to know Jimmy. He's a good guy, I promise. And by the end of the night, he's like, I'm really glad I got to know you a little bit. I can tell, like, I can see now what she sees in you or whatever. And he says, can I be honest with you, man? I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, I've always thought you were the biggest asshole. And he goes, you know why? And I go, I don't know why. And he goes, you honest to God don't care what people think. You just do what you want to do. And I think it pissed me off. Like, I'm so afraid to do the stuff I want to do. He goes, you really just do it. You don't care what and I'm like, I still care what people think. I just don't let it stop me, you know? But ultimately, that's where we get stuck. Is like, if you catch yourself wondering like, okay, how will people react to this? How are people going to see me? It's your ego, because your ego is trying to block you from having pain. But what it's really doing is it's blocking you from having an entertaining life, from having an exciting adventure or whatever might be there. I mean, the ego is the thing that stops you from going to talk to the beautiful woman, right? The ego is the thing that stops you from going for it with that career, that idea you had of running with it and trying to make it work. But if you can push past, and that's why with my coaching program, I have these guys do really scary things, because if you can jump off a cliff 300 feet, you've done it, Brad, at my birthday party, all of a sudden it's not that scary to talk to your boss about what you really want to do at your job. If you can swim with tiger sharks in the middle of the open water with no cage, all of a sudden talking to that girl that is just as insecure times 10 that you are, like you kind of figure out like, oh, you know what, I can just go talk to her. So that's why I try to, like, there's so much strategic adventures that I put into like what I do with other people, because I want people to break through those barriers so they can, I guess, kind of have that where
it gives me goosebumps, because so many of us, the human condition is full of ego, right? We're born and you're exposed to trauma, you're exposed to pain. And so at least in my experience, my human experience is I develop an ego to prevent pain, but what that does, and you said it so fast, you said, well, yeah, it's to prevent pain, but what it really does is prevent you from having this amazing experience, growth, and you recognize that, like that's the thing that prevents that.
So what
that's
is
amazing.
Jimmy Rex afraid of? What does scare you?
Honest to God, like, it's not much, because I kind of lean into it. When I feel scared, I'm like, oh, I got to do that then. You know, like, that's literally what I start thinking, right? So, like, when I saw the rope swing for the first time, my buddy Ben posted a video of it. This is 2 years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, that looks terrifying. And as soon as I said that, I was like, okay, I have to do this. And from that point on, I was trying to get it set up for 2 years, you know? And so, you know, I get scared still for sure, but I had one thing that helped me a lot too is like my mission. I just had a rule. I was talking to everybody. And so I really learned to just be able to communicate. And when you don't even speak their language and you are demanding to talk to people, and it's like they're trying to blow you away.
Hold on. You said I had a rule. So you make a rule for yourself.
Yeah. And then when I got back from my mission, I had another rule. Like, if I saw a hot chick, if I saw a girl that I want to talk to, I had 3 seconds to go talk to her. It was done. It was not a question if I was going to. If I saw a hot, attractive woman, a girl, I had to go talk to her within 3 seconds. And I talked to all of them. All of them. And my friends, they literally called me the initiator, was my nickname, because I'd open every conversation. My friends would be dilly-whacking over by the donuts or whatever, and I'm over here talking to the girls. The next thing I know, like, my friends were famous for just like come in and swoop in behind me every time, and I was fine with it. And back then, I was a little unrefined, and so I was just, I mean, the shit that came out of my mouth, I'm sure, like, you know, the things I did and said.
Did you have a strategy or a thing that you said?
I just tried to be entertaining. I just had fun with it, right? Like, I knew my rejection was only going to be so far if, like, the woman was laughing and they were having a good time. So I remember one time I talked to this girl. I wrote her a note, you know, and it said, I just slipped her the note. It was in church, and I slipped her this note, new girl, beautiful, and it said, do you like me? Check yes or no. And she reads it, and she's dying laughing, and she writes in a third box, and it says, I have a boyfriend. And so I write back, and I wrote, do you have a sister that looks, capital letters, exactly like you? And she's crying, and afterwards she's like, turns around, she goes, I'm sorry, I need to set you up with somebody, because that was so funny. But it was like, I wasn't afraid of the rejection. I was like, okay. It's like, or if, you know, you ask a girl out, she's like, oh, I'm married, and you're like, oh, I didn't see the ring, but you know, and so I'd use that line because I'd learned it. I just came to me once. So I was like, oh, well, do you have a sister that looks like exactly like you? And then they love it. They haven't been hit on since they've been married, you know, like stuff like that. And so you just would have fun with it, and just, I don't know.
So real estate was like an easy transition for you then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, real estate, well, when I first got in, the hard part was I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it. And so my first 6 months, I really struggled a little bit. And then I, discovered a coach and learned what to say, how to say it. And then from there, I mean, it blew up quick. Like, I'd sold 4 homes my first 6 months, but once I learned what to say, once I learned how to say it, I just did it all day. And I think my first full month, once I hired a coach, I sold like 31 homes. The next month I sold like 29 homes. I mean, I was on fire. I was working, I had this huge debt from the meat company, so I was working my ass off, but that's about right when we met.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my first few months, I was on fire. I was just selling everybody a house.
Was your dad a real estate agent too?
He was, but like not only when I was younger. So he was an agent, then he got out of that. So I remember like going into his office when I was a kid, and they had like his signs of real estate, like ERA signs. But he wasn't an agent anymore. So when I was young, like, he was an agent and a developer, and then he lost it all. He started driving an 18-wheeler. Like, that's when we were really poor. Then he got in selling insurance to like trucking drivers, and that's when it blew up again. He started doing really well again. But no, he wasn't. There was no real estate background. He didn't want me to go into real estate. He did very well selling the insurance. You make 7 figures, and it's a recurring income. Like, you just renew your clients, and so he thought that was definitely the better choice. But for me, I just didn't want to go into the family business. I was intrigued by real estate. I enjoyed it. And I always knew for my own investing, I knew real estate was going to be the best vehicle. So I said, why not pick a profession that allows you to become an expert on the thing that you're going to invest in anyway?
Was there something you had read or something you had listened to that gave you that?
So I got one of my buddies was selling like CDs online or CDs over like it was Prosper,
Oh yeah.
They would sell people packages of like Robert Kiyosaki and Robert, or it was Carlton Sheets and Robert Allen. That was the 3. And so I got these CDs my buddy gave me. And I just listened to those in my car, and it was like...
Makes sense.
Yeah, and that's what intrigued me. But it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just like everybody else.
Yeah, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but you took action. Like, and that's still the thing that, like, when I told you, like, I've told you several times, like, my boys look up to you. I love hearing them, seeing your stuff. And the thing I always say is, look, Jimmy just takes massive action. I don't know how else to tell you. Like... The thing that sets them apart.
Well, like, here's the thing: is like, if he fell, who cares? Like, I never saw like I do stuff all the time that like does not work, and nobody cares because it's not like you know what I mean. You just try shit, and when it doesn't work,
I still think about
go
this.
To the next thing.
Like, walk me through, Jimmy, because like all these things you do, there are, like I said, writing books, speaking. There are lots of steps to get those done, and my mind goes, oh man, there's so much to tackle to get to that thing, and so these obstacles start popping up, right?
Well, so you put it out to the universe, and then you find the people that are there to help you. So, like, my book would still not be done if I was the one writing it. Like, my buddy Cameron, he came to me because he's like, dude, I love everything you're doing. Like, I just moved to Costa Rica. I'm bored out of my mind. He was like basically retiring from Google and had moved to Costa Rica with his family. I was like, well, if you want to take on this project, I've really wanted to do this book. And he's like, dude, I've always wanted to write a book. It's like he's like, of course. And he has my voice because we've known each other since we were 12. Like, he knows all my stories, he knows everything. And so I would record a bunch of things and write some, but he's the magic of that book. But because I put it out to the universe and I decided it was going to happen, all of a sudden the right person shows up to help you, right? With real estate, I'm able to do all those things because I have the right people in place that can run with the deals. I mean, Tyler on my real estate team, I sold 375 homes for us last year. Like, every investor, I just got a message on Instagram literally yesterday from a buddy of mine. He's like, dude, just got our 3rd place with your team. Thanks so much, man. I didn't know, I forgot that I'd sent the referral over to Tyler. Like, he's closed 3 deals with him. I don't have to worry about it. So I get the right people on the bus. And then but then you're just taking action. Like, you just start doing it. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this. So like with the men's group, like, my men's coaching group, it started out, I just saw a trip that a bunch of influencers had done. If you ever saw that Wim Hof event that Aubrey Marcus and Jesse Itzler and Lewis Howes went and did, all these guys. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing.
I did see that. Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do stuff like that. And so then I was like, well, I know all these amazing influencers. I'm close friends with a lot of them. Dan Fleischman, Prince EA, all these guys. I'm like, shit, I should put one of these trips together. And then I was like, well, I could put together a bunch of them. I go, we should actually make a reality show where they could follow our stories. And so the men's group started, it was going to be me doing adventure trips with all these influencers. And then I started leaning into it and I was like, well, I talked to Dan Fleischman about it, in fact, and he's like, oh, I could help you get whoever you need. Yeah, let's do it. That'd be awesome. And then I was like, I was doing a meditation, and it came to me. I was like, the influencers don't need me. They've got their thing going. Who needs me is these guys on Instagram that keep hitting me up and going, dude, how do I find a group of friends like you guys have? Mm-hmm. Or the dude that says, man, you guys are really living. Like, I feel like I'm kind of stuck where I'm at. And I was like, oh, that's who needs this. Like, Lewis Howes doesn't need my damn program. You know what I mean? I was like, and so it shifted that day. And then it was like, oh, and it's men. It's like, oh, I lead men. I don't. So this thing was 2.5 years in the works. This wasn't like I was working on this all the time. It just, it morphed into what it became. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly which direction next, right? Like, how do I grow it from here? I've got 2 people a day hitting me up wanting to be part of the group. I've got
people hitting me up asking me how they can be part of your group.
Right. So, so it's like, so now I'm like morphing it again. It's an always moving thing. I'm just willing to try. And like, if it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, then we'll move it another way and we'll do it another way. And it's like, I'm okay with that. And so it's, people get stuck of like, I don't know what's next, and they don't have exactly what it is. We kind of just start putting stuff out there. Because when I started working on that original idea, well, all of a sudden, I'm close friends with Bea Voces, Tim Ferriss's girlfriend, and I brought it to her to look at because she throws amazing events. And selfishly, I'm like, well, shit, I'd love to have Tim there. Yeah. That'd be nice, Tim and Bea. And she looked at it with me, and she's the one that helped me realize that it's not for influencers. She's like, look, I've hung out with these guys. They all have their own things. They don't need to come to this, Jimmy. Like, who needs this? And I was like, oh, my friends need this. Like, and so anyway, so it kind of, but by putting it out there and starting to work on it, you start to kind of morphs into what it needs to be. That's with anything. You got to start working on it. You got to put it out there. You got to start telling people about it. And then ultimately the help comes where it does. Your idea is going to change a lot anyways. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I got a book, or like, oh, I guess I've got this thing going now. And so there you go.
So, sorry, Tiff, did you have something you want to go?
Well, what comes to me is, because I feel like we at times have had a lot of shit going on. Do you ever deal with like lack of focus, or does it just always fall together in the way that it?
Yeah, I mean, I learned very early on. I mean, my mentors in real estate were excellent at doing the right things. So, for example, Mike Ferry really taught the importance of doing the hard thing first every day. Like, I did not negotiate. I treated those hours of prospecting like it was a listing presentation. That was my most important thing I could do every day. So I never negotiated on that. I had a girlfriend one time, and her shower heater was out in the middle of the winter, and she had to do a cold shower. And I was like, well, go over to my house. And then her car broke down on the way. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll be there after 11 because I'm doing my calls. She's like, well, you're just doing your calls. You do this every day. I was like, can you come now? And I was like, 9:30. I'm like, I can't. I will be there after 11. Like, this is the one thing I have to do before I can come help you. And it was like that. I remember that. And she was mad at me. But I treated it like a real job. Like, if you had a real job that paid you what I was making, you couldn't just leave whenever you wanted to. And so that was one. I had really good mentors that taught me that doing the important things first. But then I also had mentors teach me to delegate the things that aren't important. Like, that's one of the most important things you can do. Stephen R. Covey, it's a beautiful way that he talks about this in the habits of
the 7 habits.
Yeah. And he talks about that quadrant, right, of what's urgent versus what's important, and what's non-important, and what's not urgent. And it's, you really got to figure out, like, okay, if somebody else can do it as good as me, I need to let them do it. And so I got really good at delegating things off to other people, and I paid them really well so they didn't leave me. Because the worst thing you want to do is, like, if you start delegating a lot of things and then everyone leaves you, and you got to start over. And that's what I mean. The people that are with me have been with me since the beginning. I mean, they're with me as long as I want them to be there, essentially, because I pay them really well and I treat them really well and I give them a lot of autonomy to screw up and to do those things. Part of it's I just don't want to micromanage. But then I had another guy named Dave Crenshaw.
He just flew through some gold right there. I know you do that all the time, but man, I would love to rewind that. We're not going to, but I just want to say that right there was gold. Mark that.
Yeah, well, and I had this guy Dave Crenshaw, and he taught me, and he came in and he wrote a book, The Myth of Multitasking, and he'd sat there for 2 days and he taught me how to be effective. And one of the things he taught me was how to do processing time. And so when you're doing your important thing, you don't get distracted by your phone or your email and everything else. Once you're done doing those things, then you go do what's called processing time. That's when I email everyone back, get back to everybody, do all that. And then anything that he says, anything you touch, you have to do something with it. You either have to throw it away, you have to handle it in the moment, or you got to schedule it. And so if I had my inbox at my office, I had one inbox in my, basically called them touch points. I had one voicemail, one email, one inbox, and one thing at my house, one thing in my car. So I had these 5 touch points. And everything in my life is in one of those 5 things if it's important. I either schedule it or I put it in one of those boxes. And once I do processing time, I go to that box and then I pull everything out of there and then I deal with it.
That is brilliant.
Oh, it's brilliant. He taught me this. I paid the guy $2,000 to come sit with me for 2 days.
He wrote a book, right?
Oh, yeah. It's The Myth of Multitasking. He's written 5 or 6 books.
Yeah.
He's got a whole series on LinkedIn. I got him before he was big. Like, I got him when he was just met him
getting started, right?
At a meeting at the bunch of random entrepreneurs having lunch. But I was so impressed by what he taught. And it's so after I went through that training with him, I felt like I had an extra 3 hours a day. But the thing is my mind is not thinking about all the bullshit all day. I know where it's at. It's in one of those 5 places. I always know where my shit's at. Always. And so what most people do is, what time's that appointment? Or what am I doing here? And you're all day, it's all energy. You're expanding energy on all that. And so it's pulling so that your mind can't be free to think and do other things.
My chest just got lighter hearing you describe that because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's...
Yeah, and when your mind's all full
huge.
of that bullshit trying to remember, you doesn't give space for thought and like for, yours download better stuff. And so my mind's free. Like it really is. I don't ever worry about where stuff's at. I don't ever lose things. I don't ever like miss appointments. I don't ever not remember what I said. I mean, it's all in those spots.
And that allows you to be free so that you
Yes.
can enjoy.
Yeah, I look at people's emails and they got like 40 things on their email. Well, how do you focus with like 40 things waiting in your email? So if you touch it, you got to do something with it. My email's always empty. My voicemail's always empty. My texts are always empty. If I look at a text, I have to do something with it right there. I either answer it real quick. That's why people are like, you always get back to me so quick. I'm like, yeah, because if I don't, I never will. Like, I'm not going to schedule to text you back. So I'm do it right away. And, sometimes I forget, but if I'm like driving, I don't want to text or something.
You're pretty good at it though, because it's one of the most impressive things.
Everyone says they're like,
I can't remember you ever missing an appointment, and you hardly ever have to reschedule stuff.
Yep.
Like getting double booked, you don't ever do that.
Right. And
you're really, really, really busy.
Well, you train people how to treat you. And so for me, I said, okay, if I'm going to live in Orem, but half my shit's in Salt Lake, I need to schedule really well. And so I just schedule things. And then I always have, like, my system always just flows. All my appointments are always together. And then, and if you just tell people what you need to do, is like, hey, I can't be there at 6. I can be there at 4. They'll make it work at 4. Otherwise, okay, like, I guess we can't do it. Like, it's okay.
Well, and I learned, like, through prospecting myself that I had to say when I'm through prospecting, right? I have tomorrow at 2 or 6 available, and I scheduled that out in my calendar and just told them what I had available. And
when I learned that when I went to Arizona State, I had to take all these listings over the phone. It was like, I wasn't going to their house anymore. I was like, all right, great. Well, let's jump on a call and talk about your property. Well, do you need to see it? I don't know. Will it change the value? I guess not. Like, tell me what adds or extracts value from it. Like, how's the carpet? How's the walls? And I'll be damned if they all didn't just do it. And so, it was like it was just like, yeah, but where people, where they don't give themselves time to think, and so of course you're not getting inspiration on new ideas. Of course you're not going to be able to put these things together. You're always thinking about the minutia and the dumb little things, and so I guess that's the way that I keep my mind clear.
It's a beautiful process, and again, gold. Like, there's gold in that.
Yeah, I felt like I had 3 extra hours a day after I took the training.
That's
honestly.
amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So, so I had a couple different thoughts that I wanted to. One thing I wanted to know how your brain works, because you are in a lot of different businesses. Like, you've invested in restaurants, you're a speaker, your men's group. How is it that you go about evaluating opportunities for people that are in this place where, okay, they're running a good business, and that's a struggle enough. And by the way, if you want to know how to run a great business, you pay attention to Jimmy, because he'll show you, at least he knows the resources to get to. But like, somebody's running a great business and they want to start diversifying, because that starts happening, right? Mm-hmm. You figured out how to scale, and you figured out how to scale by you broke it down. How do you evaluate good opportunities?
Well, so for me, number one is you can't lose track of like the prize. And I did that a couple times in my career, which is like, for me, my bread and butter was the real estate. It just was. And I tried to do a few other things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But so, for example, when I went to sell solar for Vivint Solar very early on in their company, I got promised a lot of things that were going to make it very profitable and lucrative to do. But I realized when I'm chasing these 2 rabbits, they both got away. I couldn't do it. And so I remember I woke up one day. I'd been out there for months.
San Diego, right? Did you go?
I was in Orange County.
Orange County, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Santa Rosa, then Huntington Beach. But I remember I had 17 deals under contract, probably 50 grand of commissions on the books. And I woke up and I went, I don't want to be here. I want to go do real estate again. And by 10:30, my car was full and I was on my way to, back to Utah. And I remember I called my buddy Reno. He was the manager. And I just go, hey, man, just so you know, I quit. I'm got to go back to Utah. I've got like these 17 deals. They're all yours. You don't even have to pay me a referral fee on them. You can't call me on them. I'm out. I was like, called it good that day. But no, my point of that is you got to figure out what you really want to do. And one thing that I realized is every time that I did something that worked together with real estate, it worked really well. Mm-hmm. So like when I went and coached high school baseball, I mean, that was 30 hours a week for 3 months out of the year. But I met all these people that then wanted to buy real estate. And so it kind of worked. And so then I went and did Zango and the MLM. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And I probably sold 60 homes from people I met through Zango. We had this deal with this guy, Jason Pointer, down in Arizona that I must have made six figures off of. That. And so being a real estate agent helped because I always looked at it as my worst case scenario is I'm meeting new people. So even when I quit doing Vivint Solar, I was in Santa Rosa originally, and I kind of knew I was done, but I went around for a month to all the top dudes in the company, all of them. I flew to Hawaii, Arizona, California, all over the place. I got to know all the top guys because I knew, A, I wanted to learn from them. They were smart. They were very good at sales. And B, I wanted to sell them houses later on. And so I've sold 40 now homes to guys I met in Vivint Solar over the years in a lot of big homes and stuff like that. And so like my time there was not wasted. I ended up I went from like, if you just took the money I made from Vivint Solar, I probably made $16 for every door I knocked. If you had the commissions I made from guys I met it there, I probably made about $400 per every door I knocked. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I was always looking at it as like, well, because of my career, I can justify doing that. I can justify putting extra time in these other things. But ultimately now that I'm like further along in my career, and by the way, this is important to say, when you're coming up, everything's got to be a yes. Like just say yes to most things, right? Like go meet that person, go on the lunch appointment, go to the meeting, go to the event. It's all yeses. Once you've kind of turned over that cliff, it's all no's. Like you're taking away from yourself. So it's now. Mm-hmm. So one of the number one reasons I started the $100 dinner club last year, this was probably number 2 or 3 reason I did it. I had so many people that wanted to meet and go to lunch all the time, and I feel bad saying no, but I just don't have the time. I'm building my thing, and I know what they want. They want my time. They want some attention, and I love it. Like they're trying, right? So I did the $100 dinner club because then I would just invite them all to come to that. And so I said, hey, if you guys actually want to meet, yeah, I'm actually doing this event. It's every week.
Costs you $100 on top of dinner.
$100 for dinner and bring for a tip. And I actually met 30, 40 amazing people, probably 6, 7 guys that are in my group. But I found a way to like create that. But you really got to get good at saying no as you get further along. Because people are going to try to distract you from what's so you're either building your thing or somebody else is going to have you building theirs.
Yeah.
And the way that I say it, the way that really hit me is I say every time I say yes to something, I can make a list of everything I'm saying no to. So if I say yes to go into this random meetup one night that I don't want to go to. Okay, let's say a guy invites me out to go to whatever, his thing, or get a sales pitch for lunch, whatever. Well, then I'm saying no to going to the gym. I'm saying no to hang out with my nieces and nephews. I'm saying no to going to see one of my friends that needs me. I'm saying no to coaching some of my guys that might need me. I'm saying no to prospecting and finding deals that I make about $5,600 an hour when I'm doing that actively. I'm saying no to just whatever I want to be doing. And so if I say yes to this, instead of being like, feeling bad about saying no to him, I'm saying no to all these. And I'm like, no, that matters. And so as you're coming, once you get over that hump, it's really, you got to get good at saying no. And that's what I do. I say no to 7 out of 8 random requests because it's like, I don't have time. I'm building my thing. I try to find ways where they can, even Dakota, who runs the podcast studio, you can ask him, he had to hit me up a dozen times to get an hour of my time because I just was like, I know what the kid wants. He just wants beer, but he did it the right way. And so ultimately here we are, and he runs the podcast studio now, but he had to hit me up. It was probably a dozen times.
When he first wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
And so that was like key. So to restate that, because like whenever I'm talking to, especially like you, I want my boys and my kids listening. Like you said yes a lot to everything.
Almost everything, yeah.
Well, didn't Dakota come and like offer to work for you for free?
Yeah, which and I get that all the time too. And I usually say no, because then I got to train them. I got to worry about them, and I don't have shit.
Because there is no such thing as free anything.
You're just like, okay, well now it's just, you know what I mean? You're kind of like, but the way he said it, I just appreciated the way he said it. He was like, I have money for 90 days, at the end of which you'll either have to hire me or I'll have to get a job. It's just, I don't know, I just thought he was funny. So I was just like, I actually had some shit to do that was like awful work that I didn't want to do. And I gave him all these chores. It was like bullshit. Like, and he did it all and with a smile on his face. I was like, all right, well, I actually need some stuff at the studio. And so I had him kind of build this out. I'd been sitting on it for 3 months waiting to get some stuff done, had him come do it. And then that's how he got that. But yeah, I mean, when you're coming up, I mean, I would go to every meeting. I met some of my best friends at meetings I would have never wanted to go to. Like Steve Merrill is one of my closest buddies. I remember when I first met him, it was at these guys had this thing called the HMS, the Hustler's Mindset. It was just this weird group of buddies and Provo that wanted to get together once a month, and they'd open with a prayer and a scripture, and then they would talk about business. I remember the first time I went, I was like, I barely knew one of the guys. Like, I didn't know anybody. And I just remember thinking, like, these guys are funny. They're kind of, and a lot of them became my best friends. And we all helped each other through the downturn and the upturn. And now Steve's one of my best friends. And it's just like, we met through that. I just was willing to go do that, right? And I was thinking about it the other day, how many times I went to an event by myself. I remember I was, because when I was talking to this kid, he's like, well, where do you meet girls at? The kid that had been on 2 dates, he's 19 years old. I'm like, I don't know. I started thinking, I'm like, well, I'll give you, like, I would go to a service project and then I'd find the cutest girl there and I'd ask her out. Like, I remember doing that one time. We're planting flowers one day at some bullshit place, and next thing I knew, me and her were at the BYU football game that afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, this cutest girl there is just like, just go. Like, and I just went by myself. I just went. I just go. I just pull up my phone and I don't know what's going on today and go figure it out. I just go. I was always going and meeting and trying to put myself out there and not needing it to be anything, not needing to get a result, not needing to be some life-changing thing. I just enjoyed going and trying stuff.
Well, and I love that you said, like, you created by having parties yourself, like you created the experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best thing you can do is, I mean, to put happiness on people. So there's, I've been doing these client parties for, 15 years now, pretty much once a month, whether it's right now the water park or the fireworks show or the Easter hunt or whatever it is. I mean, there's kids that are age 1 to 15 that most of their holidays of their life has been spent some kind of Jimmy Rex event. And I love that. I take a lot of pride in that. And I have people that have come to my event for 15 years and they've never bought a house off me. And I don't even care. Like, I never did it expecting to get something in return. The same thing with the parties. Like, you don't have to worry about it. If you're out there and you're doing and you're producing and you're putting good out there, like, it just creates a beautiful life. You're just going to have things flowing to you because you're putting so much good out.
You said something to me when we were coming back from Moab, and you said you've never looked at relationships as transactional. Because I'm like, this is like probably my final question for today. If everybody could have a friend like Jimmy Rex, and everybody can't because you can all, okay, let me go back. Jimmy only has so much time, so he can't be a friend to everybody in the world. And so I think the next best thing, and what I thought of, is how can I be a friend like Jimmy? Because you have this ability to maintain relationships at such a high level. Like, you have, everybody that knows you as one of their friends considers you one of their best friends. I don't,
for sure,
for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, because
I was dating a girl once, and I told her, I was like, look, you got to know I got like 50 best friends. And she was like, okay. And like 2 months later, she's like, holy shit.
That's probably an understatement, honestly. Like, because I told
closer
people
to 30 now, but
I said I'm going on this trip with Jimmy and 50 of his best friends, or 30 of his best friends, and somebody looked at me like, 30 best friends? Who has 30 best friends?
Because for your birthday, you went and created this amazing experience. You basically had this amazing retreat for a bunch of men and changed their lives forever. Like, and that's what you did for your birthday.
For sure. It was the best 3 days of my life. It was so fun. It was like, I don't know how life gets better than that 3 days. it was that good. But yeah, it can't be transactional. There's an energy that's put off when you're doing something to get something in return, and you can feel it when you're tapped into that. And so if you're doing it expecting to get something back, it's going to repel the people you're trying to attract in. They'll get it. They'll feel that. And people can't help themselves. When they're trying to get something, it comes through. It's energetic. And so you have to give everything expecting nothing in return. And by the way, all pain that we experience in life, comes from unmet expectations, either our own or somebody else's. And so if you're expecting a result from what you did and you're expecting people to react a certain way, you're expecting them to act a certain way, you're going to feel bad when they don't. You're going to feel pain when they don't. But when you do it, because you truly get as much joy in just giving it as you would if you were receiving it, then you don't care. It's like the gift was mine to give, and that's where I got the joy from it. And so that's the difference between giving just because that's how you want to live versus trying to get something in return.
Intention is everything. I try to like set an intention for every situation that I walk into, because that energy always comes through.
It does, yeah.
And when you make it a conscious thought, it changes everything.
Yeah. So this is, I think this is such an important lesson, because like there's so many influencers, so many entrepreneurial, and when you're talking about going to everything, saying yes, 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 you're not necessarily thinking of it, because if I say yes, then maybe I'll meet somebody who'll give me a referral and I can go sell a house. You're thinking, I'm saying yes because I need all of these experiences.
Yeah, it's just like,
I need this connection
from it, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Just yes to say yes. I don't have an expectation on what that needs to be. I don't need an outcome. I don't need to like, oh, that wasn't worth my time because. In fact, people I've tried over the years, they want to partner with me on stuff like, well, what can I expect to get out of this? I'm like, you can't expect shit. I don't know what's going to come out of it. Like, well, how many do you get? I'm like, I have no idea. They're like, well, how do you track it? I'm like, I don't. I can do good all day, and a lot of good happens to me. Yeah, so that's my formula.
So I don't know
I can't put it in a freaking spreadsheet for you. You know what I mean?
So throw a party, invite 50 people, get 2 referrals, sell a house.
That's what they wanted. They wanted right. How many referrals come in? If we're going to pay for half of this event, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't promise you shit. I don't know. And we don't talk about business at the event, by the way.
We're just diving into people.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
People feel the difference. They know.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of just allowing the universe to present whatever it's going to present for you.
Yeah.
And just letting it all fold out. It's beautiful. I love
it. Well, we're like up against it. We're committed to this hour, and I told you before we started, I feel like I want to grab you for like 4 hours every year. If I could grab 4 hours of Jimmy's time.
Well, I always enjoy our time together, so that's never a
likewise. Problem. And thank you for sharing that. Let's make sure everybody's following you, and everybody should be following you. Social media handles and whatnot. Mr. Jimmy Rex on Instagram. Where else?
Yeah, that's the best place to follow me is on Instagram, because I post everything else I do through my stories on Instagram. So if I'm speaking, or if I have something come out, or I have opened up my coaching program, any of those things I'll do through my Instagram. So that's the best place to follow.
By the way, if he's such a fun public speaker. He's got a background in stand-up comedy. Like, he loves being on stage. And if you need a public speaker for anything, you should have Jimmy, because he's so fun and so entertaining. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Likewise. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. This podcast was brought to you by True Agency Real Estate. If you want to check us out, our website is www.utahtrueagency.com, and we are also on all of the socials.